There are generally two types of X-Men villain. On the one hand, you have characters like Magneto and Emma Frost, whose immorality is undercut by a spark of goodness or a code of ethics, and then you have the other type of villain, who are, for a lack of better words, absolute heels. They're the type of villains who just want to indulge in their twisted obsessions, exercise their raging prejudices, or just want to do some good old-fashioned despotic world conquering. With this in mind, I'm Jules, your Southwest Savage, and these are the 10 most evil X-Men villains. Number 10. Azazel. It's pretty easy to sum up why Azazel should be on this list. He's literally the devil. To elaborate, Azazel is a leader of an ancient race of demonic mutants who were banished to an alternative dimension by another race of more angelic mutants. This story apparently formed the basis of humanity's ideas about heaven, hell, and Satan. Now, his only way to return to our dimension outside of short spells that his teleportation powers allow is to use his children as biological anchors to this reality. So when he pops back, he tries to bang as many women as he can so he can eventually have enough kids to keep him here for good. Now, the idea of preying on innocent women and having them give birth to what will become their own doom is pretty bad indeed, especially when it's alluded to that not all of these events were consensual. Number 9. Donald Pierce. Initially, Donald Pierce doesn't seem like much, just a rich industrialist and a background member of the Hellfire Club. However, that would change in his later appearances. Pierce was revealed to be a cyborg and a mutant-hating bigot who only joined the Hellfire Club to try and kill them. He would then go on to lead the Reavers, a group of mercenaries turned twisted monstrosities by their cybernetic implants. The Reavers proved to be a deadly threat, forcing the X-Men to flee their Australian base and crucified Wolverine, leaving him for dead. What makes Pierce so evil is the sheer depth of his hatred. Not only does he hate mutants and most non-Americans, he even hates himself for his robotic parts. And yet that didn't stop him from replacing more and more of himself with machines, becoming less and less human, just so he could become better at murdering mutants. In more recent appearances, it's been revealed that Pierce no longer has any organic parts, and is now a bona fide 100% killing machine. Number 8. The Shadow King. The Shadow King is one of the X-Men's oldest foes and technically responsible for the formation of the team. As the telepath Amal Farouk, the Shadow King became a crime lord in Egypt and encountered a young Charles Xavier after one of his pickpockets robbed him. Farouk tried and failed to convince the future Professor X to join him, and so the two fought. It was a vicious battle fought on the astral plane, and Xavier could only win the battle by killing his opponent with a bolt of psychic energy. It was this incident which inspired Xavier to form his own team to fight against other evil mutants. However, it turned out that the Shadow King was much more than just Amal Farouk. The real Shadow King was a psychic entity who lived on the astral plane and had merged with Farouk when he first discovered his powers. As such, the Shadow King was able to keep returning to plague the X-Men, possessing a new host each time. And that's a terrifying thought, that at any point your mind could be taken over by the Shadow King and you'd be forced to do his bidding, nothing more than a prisoner in your own body. Number 7. Mastermind. Rather than being a mutant with a superhuman memory for trivia, Mastermind had the power to create incredibly realistic illusions. He was a founding member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but wouldn't reach his full potential until he joined the Hellfire Club and played a key role in the Dark Phoenix saga. Posing as an aristocrat, Jason Wyngarde seduced Jean Grey and used his illusions to make her believe that she was the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, which allowed the rest of the club to manipulate her into attacking the X-Men. Not only was this plan super sleazy, but it backfired horribly. When Jean saw Cyclops die, her mind snapped and she became the Dark Phoenix, a cosmic force of destruction who blows up planets for fun. She also broke Jason's mind, leaving him in a coma, but for all the chaos he'd caused, this was still far from the punishment he deserved. Number 6. Selene. Another member of the Hellfire Club, Selene has fought the X-Men, New Mutants, and even her fellow teammates as the Black Queen. However, Selene Gallo was much more than just another rich mutant with some kinky fashion choices. Selene is actually an immortal vampire who's been around since the time before recorded history known as the Hyborian Age. Over the centuries, she's racked up quite an impressive resume of evil, including enslaving the entire civilization of Nova Roma to worship her as a goddess. In more modern times, she's murdered a friend of Rachel Summers, kidnapped her own granddaughter Magma, and manipulated a group of young mutants called the Upstarts into engaging in a murder spree with the promise of immortality. Selene would top that though during the story Necrotia. As part of a ritual to become a goddess, she attacked the X-Men with an army of zombies, including fallen friends like Thunderbird and Blink, dangerous enemies like Pyro and Destiny, all of the dead of Genosha, and Barnacle. Selene was killed by Warpath before she could achieve godhood, but like all good villains, that didn't keep her down for long. Number 5. William Stryker. A religious fanatic with ties to the Weapon X program, William Stryker used Christianity to justify his intense hatred of mutants, claiming them to be sent by Satan to destroy humanity. In the classic story God Loves, Man Kills, Stryker used his position as a televangelist to try and incite the public to acts of anti-mutant violence, whilst also secretly using his own paramilitary group, the Purifiers, to commit horrific hate crimes. He even kidnapped Professor X and tried to use his powers to kill every mutant on the planet before the X-Men stopped him. He then made a massive resurgence after Scarlet Witch depowered 90% of the world's mutants. Hitting the X-Men when they were at their lowest, he sent the Purifiers to attack the Xavier Institute. The attack was carnage, severely injuring characters like Cannonball and Bishop and killing Wallflower, one of the few remaining mutants on the planet. The biggest tragedy though was when one of the Purifiers fired a rocket at a bus containing depowered children and killed everyone on board. Number 4. Mr. Sinister. Once a Victorian geneticist named Nathaniel Essex, Sinister's experiments on himself have kept him alive for centuries and granted him telepathic and shape-shifting abilities. Sinister is obsessed with the X-Man Cyclops and has been manipulating his entire life since birth. He cloned Jean Grey to create Madeline Pryor, a woman who Scott married after Jean sort of died a bit, all because it was part of his plan to continue his twisted experiments on their son. His most sinister act though was initiating the mutant massacre. Essex sent out his gang of cloned mutant thugs known as the Marauders to the home of the Morlocks, and had them start killing everyone. The X-Men were able to prevent the Morlocks from being completely wiped out, but the body count was still in the hundreds, and a lot of the X-Men were badly injured. So, why did Mr. Sinister do all of that? Well, he saw another scientist had used his work to genetically tamper with the Morlocks, and he didn't like his work being copied. Seems fair enough. Number 3. STRYFE. STRYFE is a clone of the time-traveling mutant Cable. Growing up to hate his air quotes brother, he murdered Cable's wife and abducted his son in the future before eventually traveling to the 20th century. Once there, he founded the terrorist group the Mutant Liberation Front and clashed with Cable and his team X-Force before he was eventually killed by Cable. Now, in all honesty, STRYFE is pretty rubbish, mainly due to how incredibly 90s he is. His origin story is horribly convoluted, involving both cloning and time travel, his name is stupid, and his costume is wildly impractical. However, he still absolutely deserves his spot on this list because STRYFE was responsible for releasing the Legacy virus into the world. This virus targeted the X gene, causing hundreds of mutants across the planet to die in agonizing pain. Not only that, but the virus also caused its victims' powers to wildly flare out of control, which ratcheted up tensions between humans and mutants, much to his delight. Number 2. Cassandra Nova. The X-Men comics have always prided themselves on their soap opera elements, so of course Professor X has an evil twin. This being comics though, said evil twin is actually an alien parasite who used Charles's DNA to make herself a body in his mother's womb. Cassandra's thoughts were so evil that baby mutant telepathic Xavier strangled her, and when even a fetus thinks that you're too evil to be allowed to live, that's maybe a bad sign. Charles would be proven right years later when Cassandra Nova rebuilt herself and introduced herself to the X-Men with a bang. Taking control of the Sentinel, she sent the mutant hunting robots to the island of Genosha, wiping out millions of its inhabitants. And that was just the start of her plan. Cassandra allowed herself to be captured by the X-Men so that she could be brought back to the mansion. Once there, she swapped her mind with Xavier's and got to work. She psychologically crippled most of the team, mind-controlled a student into beating Beast into a coma, and then drove Charles's lover insane and had her attack her own planet. Wow. And number 1, Apocalypse. Up there with Magneto, Apocalypse is one of the X-Men's greatest foes and has been responsible for some of their biggest struggles. Claiming to be the first mutant, Apocalypse rose to power in ancient Egypt, using advanced technology gifted to him by the godlike aliens the Celestials to enforce a brutal regime of survival of the fittest. Then, after spending centuries in hibernation, he awoke in the present day to continue his test to see if mankind were worthy of survival. The true scope of Apocalypse's evil was seen in the massive title-spreading story of Age of Apocalypse. When super powerful mutant Legion traveled back in time to kill Magneto, he inadvertently killed Charles Xavier instead, throwing the timeline into chaos. As a result, Apocalypse was able to take advantage of this, and history was rewritten so that he was ruler of Earth. The world under Apocalypse's rule certainly lived up to his name, as corpses lined the streets of cities that had been reduced to bombed out husks. In this new timeline, heroes like Cyclops and Havoc were now brutal enforcers for Apocalypse's regime and were supported by an army of multiple men. The only ones who stood against them were a ragtag bunch of X-Men led by Magneto. The timeline was eventually restored and Apocalypse's reign was undone, but it still serves as a chilling reminder that people who name themselves after the end of the world probably aren't looking to hand out free ice cream and puppies. And that's our list. Got any more comic book enemies whose villainy needs to be acknowledged? Well, let us know about them in the comments section below. And why not swing by whatculture.com for more daily articles and news. I've been Jules of whatculture.com. You can follow me here on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, and I'll speak to you soon.